The Return to Neverland Cabaret is an amalgamation of shared nostalgia. It's a creation based on a shared experience that a lot of us have had with a lot of media, and we're trying to paint a picture of basically growing up and experiencing that.
So UD Lyric Theater really has two different major production projects that it does every semester. In our main stage pieces, we do traditional productions of operatic or musical theater works. In our cabaret series, we do these more public-facing concerts, which include more popular music, some musical theater examples, and other kind of fun cabaret projects.
So, UDLT presents a series of cabarets throughout the academic year, usually about one per semester. And recently, we've fallen into a bit of a tradition of doing some sort of Disney childhood representation Fairytale cabaret series since, I believe, about my senior year is when we started.
So the Return to Neverland Cabaret actually has a good bit of lore and history to it, because this is actually our second big Neverland fairy tale centric project we've done, although it's the third that we've started. A couple of years ago, in the spring of 2023, I believe, we were doing our first Fairytale Cabaret, and in the middle of the first half, the power went out. A transformer blew up near Bayard Sharp Hall, and it completely shut the performance down, and there was no power coming back. So we actually had to stop in the middle of the first half and send everybody home. We were able to present a version of that the following fall, in the fall of 2023. That project was so well received, and the students they loved doing all the Disney stuff and things like that. So they were begging me to do another one. So we've done other cabaret projects since then. But in the spring of this semester, we decided, you know what? Let's go back to Neverland and let's do another Fairytale Cabaret. So what actually counts as a Fairytale Cabaret? Oddly enough, among ourselves, we often kind of just refer to it as a Disney Cabaret because it started as a Disney project. And ironically, in the spring of 2023, I actually had to reach out to our university's general counsel to see if we could actually call it a Disney Cabaret, and the reality is you cannot. So the Disney Corporation does not take kindly to people borrowing their name, so we actually had to not call it a Disney Cabaret, and we turned it into a Fairytale Cabaret. And that actually allowed us to sort of broaden the scope of what we were offering. So instead of just doing animated Disney things and Pixar things, we were able to go to DreamWorks and other kind of cool things. And so it actually opened up more repertoire to us, which wound up being a really fun thing.
I live and breathe Disney. I'm a Disney adult. I'm not sorry. I'm 21. I went to Disney for my birthday. It was a little humbling. My dad told Daisy Duck that I was having my first legal drink. And I wanted to die.
So I was a product of the early 2000s. So I was raised on Disney Channel, I was raised on Nickelodeon, and I was raised on a lot of these classic Disney Channel original movies that we are likely going to represent in this program. Things like movie adaptations of TV shows that I would watch in my day-to-day life, like the Hannah Montana movie, like the Camp Rock movie, like Victorious, all of these different variations on shows that I grew up with that have music involved in them that as a child, who knows, listening to could have and has actually inspired me to continue to pursue music in my life.
So I'm the youngest of three, and then I have a brother who is 4 years older and 6 years older, and obviously, like, being the only girl, being the youngest, this was kind of one of those things where, like, we can throw on Disney Channel and we all have something that we can enjoy watching. And so it was a way to connect with my family, and then of course it was a way to connect with my brothers. And then of course, like, the older films that I ended up, familiarizing myself with as I grew up, and some of them were like, my parents were like, you'd love this, and some of them were, what's genuinely playing on Disney Channel, and they play those old movies, and all of a sudden, my mom and I are watching Cinderella on the couch. And
I don't know. It feels really important to people our age, and it feels like it'll be really fun for us to do and fun to experience.
Y'all are tuning into the fact that anything, if positioned well, could probably work, right?
So the process for programming for UDLT has actually developed into a far more democratic process than, say, any other performance avenue that we may have experienced in the past.
Yeah, so I'm really used to, like, in high school it was like, I want to be in this show, or we did some cabaret style things, but it was like, you walk in with the song you want to sing in the show, and if it fits the narrative of the show, they'll let you in. And we are so radically different from that for two reasons. Number one, because we have the company before we have the show. And that's actually really exciting because we as performers get to decide the narrative that we want to tell.
In this, we're all selecting our own repertoire with one another. We're voting on it in class. We're having group discussions, large group discussions and small group discussions, deciding upon our themes among one another. It's sort of becoming naturally more a representation of who we are as people because we are the ones making that decision.
The hope is that when you're planning your degree recitals or your junior recitals or your senior recitals, your graduate recitals, whatever it is, or when you're planning your choral concerts, things like that as a teacher, my hope is that you actually think about some of these things that we're talking about when you're planning.
Music conservatories in the U.S. are really pretty good at doing a few different things. They're really good at training musicianship skills, really good at helping people being better performers, and in their ensembles, they're usually really quite good at producing really high quality performances. But one of the things that is kind of conspicuously missing from a lot of those conservatory experiences are fostering just general creativity. The way that we've been trying with this particular cabaret project to sort of broaden our both professional and pedagogical scope is to do these promotional videos, which I hope some of you have seen perhaps on our social media pages, where the students actually selected some questions and identified some things that might be fun to include, and then we had a very brief unit on how to edit and move those things together. Not to mention the fact that the students were able to self-select and present repertoire to be included. All of the sort of big ensemble numbers were chosen by the ensemble. So we were able to try and really give them a look behind the sort of creative planning curtain. And I think that actually creates a very different experience for them that allows them to feel more agency, not just in sort of presenting things that they care about, but also putting some real creative decision making on their plates as students, which again, I think has the potential to really transform the experience for them.
Programming this cabaret specifically was interesting in that we knew what we were trying to communicate. Getting a thread through all of those kind of scattered pieces was a little bit difficult because everyone felt really strongly about the nostalgia and the communication of this nostalgia and how these things are very dear to us. But at the end of the day, it's not the exact same shared experience. It took careful massaging to kind of get an idea and a pointed theme that we could all agree on.
We end up with a product that is so uniquely us and that tells a narrative that we want to tell instead of our voices being used to further someone else's artistic ideals.
And looking for creative pathways in what's next for young professional musicians. It's very likely that the sort of current professional pathways and the pathways that conservatories have always been training people for are going to look quite different in the future. And UDELT is hopefully part of this new wave of de-centered and more sort of student empowering ensemble experiences.
Well, no, you're still going to do some, but
Is sort of a mixture of multiple different emotions. I feel as if nostalgia can be a huge part of it, but not just for yourself. I believe nostalgia for your children, for what your siblings may have experienced. My form of nostalgia, or the shows that I may have grown up with as someone born in 2001, are probably different than, say, the shows that maybe some of the freshmen or sophomores here grew up with. Probably definitely different than what my professors grew up with, what my parents grew up with, grandparents grew up with, and many of the audience members.
This one has kind of taken on a life of its own, and because the students had more of the sort of creative planning part of it, it actually turned into something that's really kind of far less centered on the old classic animated movies that Disney has done in the past, and has actually become something that's really more kind of personally important to them.
I think we're definitely no matter who you are, experiencing a time where like comfort and media that makes you feel good can be really hard to find. I think about like kids growing up today and their association with media and what they think of when they see it, and I think I love art that challenges people, but if this could just be a haven of comfort and yes, nostalgia, but just appreciation of what was.
I think you should come to this cabaret because it's so rare that a piece is able to so deeply and authentically reflect the makeup of the ensemble.
I believe that music and media should be something that brings people together, and I think that this cabaret is going back to that in a lot of ways.
This was a very important time for a lot of people, and that nostalgia isn't going to be there forever, but it's not an infinite well of memories. It's the memories you have, and those ones that you can hold in your hand are very precious.
I think if you're a UD student, chances are a lot of this stuff is going to be from your youth as well, so you'll probably recognize a lot of these tunes. If you're a parent like I am, you're probably going to hear some things that you remember your kids playing. And there's all kinds of crazy, great memories that'll come from that.
An experience that we all experience, that we all relate to, no matter who you are, no matter how old you are. I mean, there's something for everyone in this cabaret.
So there's all kinds of potential for really meaningful experiences emotionally and some really, really great singing. So I think it's going to be a great time.